Tumerejea vijijini, mijini na hata jijini kukuletea taarifa mchana kutwa. Usiku tunaketi kitako, tunadadavua tukichanganua taarifa na makala muhimu yanayokuhusu wewe na familia yako. Ungana na Bernard Ngozi kwenye Open Forum Political Show kuanzia saa 4 usiku hadi dakika zake kila siku ya wiki kwenye
Tuko pamoja. Wafikirie vizuri.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back. This is another amazing day, another amazing time, another amazing minute, an amazing moment, an amazing second, whereby we are here to have a discussion tonight over the matters that have been raising up to the nation and the matters that have been going on in our nation. There's a lot that is happening in our nation, but we thank God for it, and we want to know what is it or what do we want supposed to align to it and make things work together in a good and in a better way. On today's front, we still have the story that is still moving up and raising up the standard and bringing a move over the impeachment of President Ruto with the members of parliament, after President Ruto has kicked off the boat by saying that they are advocate of corruption, thereby they need the money to make sure anything goes ahead. True. Apart from that one, we still have the other conversations that have been raised up with Mudavadi and also other conversations that has been raised up with Kenyans too. We'll be checking up on the front and on the panel blast. We'll be checking up the union and the movement and the conversation over it. Now today, welcome to the Kivumbi Siasa, so that tonight we're having the great conversation over the matters that has been moving on and have been raising up around. But before we do that, let us have the updates of the day. The pilots who were the 6 people, the flight that dropped at that killed people in a plane crash in Mohoko, the barrels was done today. Apart from that one, with the stories that are still hitting on is the MP launches today. Also, we still have another story that has been hitting the headlines tonight. Is all about what has been going on and what has been bringing up. Shah is still on the platform, but then I'll speak about Shah because Shah has been there and still bringing us the funds and everything about it. So I want to welcome you all. Feel free, let us be part and parcel of this as when we are having the conversation tonight, because tonight we're going to have the great time together and the great moment together for the conversation tonight. For those who are joining up the studio, we have the first segment that will have the conversation. The second segment, bringing another board that will be having the conversation with us inside the studio. So please, I invite you to be part and parcel of this and be the part and parcel of this first conversation so that we can move together and we can have the conversation as we have agreed together, and it will be good so that we can move together as it is. Welcome back. Today on the political front, we'll be checking up the updates of the day. Later, we'll be checking out what has been going on, what has been cruising over during the day. Then we will be having the conversation tonight over what has been going on and on and on and on. But first of all, let us begin with the political front today. Tonight, the political front has cooked and everything is now on the heat and everything's now running and getting hot and hotter and hotter. This is the updates of the day. I'll play a couple of videos showing the updates of the day, and then we will be moving on to the conversation of the night.
iliyotokea eneo la Mwihoko majuma matatu yaliyopita imefanyika hii leo. Ni ibada iliyowaleta pamoja jamaa, marafiki na hata wafanyakazi wenza pamoja na waathiriwa wengine wawili walioaga dunia kufuatia ajali hiyo.
Katika kanisa la Nairobi Chapel humu jijini, ibada ya kumbukumbu ya pamoja iliandaliwa siku moja baada ya waathiriwa wa mwisho wa ajali ya ndege kufanyika. Sifa tele zikimiminiwa waathiriwa hao wanne, wafanyikazi wa shirika la Amref pamoja na wengine wawili wa jamii ya Mwihoko walioangamia kufuatia ajali ya ndege ya Amref tarehe 8 mwezi huu.
I still hold on to his last WhatsApp message to me just a few minutes before he took off, telling me that he had gone for a flight and that he would be home late that evening.
As a family, we mourn Brao deeply. Yet in this pain, we have discovered something about ourselves. How strong we are together, how much closer we have become, and how intentional we have grown in showing love.
At first, when we heard the news, some of us were not able to accept it. We were like, after some time, she will be able to reach out to us. She'll be able to tell us that she was able to escape.
Ibada hiyo ikiwa ni maadhimisho ya kumbukumbu ya maisha ya rubani Muthuka Munuve, rubani Brian Kemani, daktari Charles Njoroge na muuguzi Jane Omusula waliojitolea kutoa huduma za dharura za matibabu. Wakati wa ajali walikuwa kwenye lengo la kuokoa maisha ya mtoto aliyekuwa akihitaji matibabu ya dharura nchini Somalia. Waliokumbukwa vilevile ni James Getau na Yvonne Nasimiu kutoka jamii ya Mwihoko ambao pia walipoteza maisha yao wakati wa ajali hiyo baada ya kuangukiwa na ndege.
It's been really tough. But even as we mourn, I want us to celebrate the life of these family members that we've lost because we are reminded that out of all God's gifts, the gift of life is the greatest.
Uchunguzi kuhusu chanzo cha ajali unaendelea huku shirika la Amref likitoa hakikisho kwa familia za waathiriwa kuwa ukweli utabainika. Tayari shirika hilo limerejelea shughuli zake za kawaida baada ya kipindi cha maombolezo. Baada ya siku 18 za maombolezo, hatimaye familia na jamii zimewaaga wapendwa wao waliopoteza maisha katika ajali hiyo ya ndege. Wote 6 wamepumzishwa ikitamatisha kipindi kigumu cha huzuni. Ben Kirui, runinga ya Citizen, Nairobi.
And thousands of learners resume school for the 3rd term amid a funding crisis that threatens to cripple the education sector. Parents and stakeholders in the sector have been sent into panic mode as learning institutions reopen without a funding strategy in place, despite promises by the Ministries of Education and the National Treasury. Marian Nyambura has that report.
It's back to school as learners resume classes for the 9 weeks long final term of the year. Learners jammed various bus termini as they sought transport to their various schools. But even as parents strive to ensure that learners get back to school on time, there is growing concern over funding, given that schools were forced to close earlier than scheduled in 2nd term. Over funding crisis occasioned by failure by the government to release capitation.
Sai mnataka mtoe sai na watoto ni wako kwa shida sai, sisi wasasi changamoto ndio hiyo. Sasa tunaomba serikali hata president mwenyewe uangalie hiyo maneno.
Ya kwanza kabisa ni kuomba serikali wa release capitation, maana wakienda kwa shule bila capitation hawatapata nafasi ya kusoma sawa sawa.
Since the government is not giving the schools capitation, it has really affected our business.
The Ministry of Education is yet again making promises. Education Principal Secretary says they are in talks with the National Treasury.
And I want to assure the country that we are putting measures. We have made the exchequer requests, and we are expecting that in the next few days, money will be in our schools.
A commitment undertaken by National Treasury Cabinet Secretary John Mbadi, who pledged to disburse 23 billion shillings to the 45,000 schools across the country.
Tomorrow, money for capitation will go to the Ministry of Education. But it is not enough. So I want you to help National Treasury by making more resources available we educate our children, we provide enough money for health.
Education stakeholders hope that the funds will be disbursed to avoid disruptions in learning during the shortest term of the school calendar year, during which national examinations are administered. Marian Nyambura, Citizen TV.
Now, an undercurrent is swelling in the political scene, challenging the status quo of government and the united opposition. The emerging Kenya Moja movement, also dubbed the third force, is now prompting serious debate and a shakeup in the political arena. Spearheaded mostly by younger political players, the movement brands itself as a bold alternative to the status quo, while openly opposing President William Ruto's administration. Could this be the groundwork for a new political party in the country? Here's Melita Oletenges.
Nilianza tu kimchezo hivi, nikaweka kwanza poster ikaenda.
What began as testing the raging political waters is quickly morphing into a powerful political shift. The Kenya Moja movement, or the third force, is now making waves in Kenya's turbulent political waters.
We are not a third force. We are the only force. Because there is no any other alternative to leadership.
This is a struggle of change between the old and the new. It is a transition. The way we transitioned from the colonialists to now African leadership.
Positioning themselves as the voice of reform, proponents of the movement say they are seeking accountability and a revival of democratic faith among citizens. However, critics within their own parties see them as rebels, possibly even traitors.
You know, Melita, we are not rebelling in ODM. We are not rebels. We are working within the dictates and principles of democracy. Those who are rebels are the ones who went to Boo Baba the other day when they called for a joint PG.
The resistance is there. We are being threatened day and night. We are developing a thick skin. Woe unto you if our skin become thicker, because that means there's nothing else you will be threatening us on.
Tumezingirwa kila mahali na maadui ambao wanataka kutumaliza. Herode anatokea huku. Saa kidogo Goliathi ametokea pande hii. Nebukadnezar ako mbele yetu.
These leaders are now stepping out from the shadows of their political mentors, spreading their wings with independence that they hope will reshape the traditional voting patterns in the country. But without a political vehicle, is Kenya Moja laying the foundation for a new political party?
Movements will germinate into a political party. If it becomes a political party, so be it.
Every political party is always registered with an intention to get the people. But the moment we have the people, then in ourselves, the name Babu Owino, ain't it bigger than almost 100% of the political parties in this country? So Babu Owino alone is a political party.
Their ambition doesn't stop there. The Kenya Moja wing claims that more prominent politicians sitting on the fence, like Kiharu MP Ndindi Nyoro and Nyali MP Mohamed Ali, may be joining the cause.
In politics, there's the sky and the ground. The sky are the principles. And the sky will always depend on what the ground says. But if we can get to the ground directly, then we don't need the sky.
And with the November 27th by-elections looming, Kenya Moja has already hinted at backing candidates of choice in the specific areas. Melita Oletenges, Citizen TV.
ODM and UDA women MPs have rallied locals in the county of Nakuru to back President William Ruto's push to fight corruption in the country. Speaking in Njoro in Nakuru County, the lawmakers called on Kenyans to reject leaders engaged in divisive politics in the country. Here's Stephen Leto.
The women lawmakers converged in Njoro for a women empowerment program. The lawmakers revisited President Ruto's remarks on the fight against corruption and called for a concerted effort within government to slay the dragon of corruption in the country.
Kama mbunge, kwa sababu nimekuwa sasa huko miaka 7 kuelekea 8. Hii ufisadi inatoka chini inakuja juu.
Na sasa hii ametoa kimango, yani amechomoka anasema no corruption. Hata kama wewe ni besa yake utakaa kando. Si anafanya vizuri? So mtu kama anafanya vizuri, don't judge within 3 years.
UDA women lawmakers present in the event took issue with the opposition leaders, particularly those propagating divisive politics, and called on Nakuru locals to reject them at the ballot.
Our constituency ilichimba shimo na ikaweka ukabila, ikaweka chuki na ikaweka maovu na ikazika kwa kaburi la sahau. Mnajua vita ya wanasiasa wakikosana ndio mnakuwaga watu wetu. Sasa ile wanakura amkuwagi watu wetu. Mnakuwaga watu wetu tukikosana.
The leaders lauded President William Ruto's efforts of uniting the country through development projects. In Malava, Kakamega County, other Kenya Kwanza leaders mounted a campaign for the revival of the agriculture sector in the western region and called on the farmers to embrace the government as it moves to pass the sugar levy bill to open up roads in the region.
Tunaenda kuharakisha zile regulation za Sugar Act, tulipitisha ile sheria ya miwa. Na katika hizo sheria tuko na 4% sugar levy ambayo inafaa iwe pesa inaletwa mashinani kutengeneza barabara zetu.
Mimi najua mnaenda kuchagua directors. Hawa directors ambaye mtawachagua muangalie sawa sawa ili wasiende kuuza shares ya watu ya Malava.
The leaders were in Manda Shivanga, Malava constituency during a fundraiser for the late UDA aspirant Dr. Enoch Andanje. Stephen Letos, Citizen TV.
Na viongozi wa mrengo mpya wa kisiasa wa Kenya moja sasa wanasema wanajiandaa kujipima nguvu kwa uwezekano wa kubuni chama kipya cha kisiasa. Viongozi hawa wanaojumuisha baadhi ya waliokuwa wanasiasa wa ODM na UDA wameonekana kujipigia debe na kuandaa mikutano kivyao. Lakini je, wanapanga kusajili ushirikiano wao kama chama kwenye uchaguzi mkuu ujao?
Hivi nikaweka kwanza posta ikaenda.
Ilianza kama jaribio la kupima kina cha maji marefu ya siasa za nchi, wakati ambapo vuguvugu la Gen Z lilikuwa likiibua maswali makubwa kuhusu mwelekeo wa utawala na nafasi ya vijana katika uongozi wa taifa. Sasa mrengo wa Kenya moja unaojulikana pia kama Third Force unaonekana kuzua mawimbi makubwa katika bahari ya siasa.
We are not a third force. We are the only force. Because there is no any other alternative to leadership.
This is a struggle of change between the old and the new. It is a transition. The way we transitioned from the colonialists to now African leadership.
Wanajitambulisha kama sauti ya mabadiliko, wenye ajenda za uwajibikaji, kupambana na ufisadi na kurejesha imani ya wananchi kwa utawala wa kidemokrasia. Ila wanakumbana na dhoruba kali kwa kuonekana kama wasaliti katika vyama vyao.
You know, Melita, we are not rebelling in ODM. We are not rebels. We are working within the dictates and principles of democracy. And ODM means Orange Democratic Movement. Therefore, we are working within the dictates and the principles of the party.
The resistance is there. We are being threatened day and night. We are developing a thick skin. Woe unto you if our skin become thicker.
Wengi wao wakionekana kuondoka kivulini mwa waliowalea siasani na kutanua mabawa yao ya kisiasa.
In politics, there is the sky and the ground. The sky are the principles. And the sky will always depend on what the ground says. But if we can get to the ground directly, then we don't need the sky.
Lakini je, Kenya moja au Third Force ndio msingi wa kubuniwa kwa chama kipya?
So movements will germinate into a political party. If it becomes a political party, so be it.
Those who will want to fight us, we are God sent. Those who will fight us are sent by the devil.
Pia wamedai kuwa wana chaguo lao la viongozi katika chaguzi ndogo za Novemba 27.
I've been speaking to Ndindi Nyoro. He will soon be part of this movement. And there will be other people, other MPs. But most importantly, Kenyans are behind this movement.
Melita Oletenges, runinga ya Citizen.
This is how things are happening and things are moving on very, very, very fast. I want to welcome you the links on the comment section for those who are watching us live. You can come into the studio and have the conversation. So those are the updates of the day. And by the updates of the day, we still have the main things of the day. So first of all, the first part of the speaking is about the story about Ruto being impeaching. They want to impeach Ruto. What do you feel? Do you feel that they have the rights to impeach Ruto? Do you feel they have the need to impeach Ruto, the power to impeach Ruto? Yes, I know they have the power, but is it true? Let us watch this video. Let us begin from this point.
Once again, it's a pleasure to have you with us. Thanks for making time. Checkpoint begins right now. Now, what was meant to be a Sunday service at JTM Church in Embakasi area here in Nairobi quickly transformed into a fiery political battlefield. Leaders under the Kenya Mpya Brigade, led by Nairobi Senator Edwin Sifuna and Embakasi East MP Babu Owino, seized the pulpit, accusing President William Ruto of hiding behind endless graft accusations against Parliament while sparing his own circle. According to the leaders, if the president truly wanted to slay the graft monster, he should start by firing and prosecuting the corrupt leaders and not pointing fingers from afar. Here's Haman Kamariki with the details.
Maana ya kwanza ya bottom up ni kuchukua pesa ya wananchi ya Kenya kule chini kisha iliwe kule juu State House. Iibiwe kule juu. Instead of seeing the broad-based government, you see the broad-based corruption.
Wale wanatuchorea, wale wanatupangia, wale wanataka kutumaliza, watamalizika kabla sisi tumalizike.
The walls of JTM Embakasi Church vibrated with these stinging words as Senator Edwin Sifuna and Member of Parliament Babu Owino turned the Sunday service into a political pulpit, taking direct aim at President William Ruto, accusing him of grandstanding while lacking the will to slay the corruption dragon. What began as a sermon soon became a political firestorm. Githunguri's Gathoni Wamushomba, Saboti's Caleb Amisi and their Kitutu Church's South counterpart Anthony Kibagendi joined the chorus, branding Ruto not just complicit but the high priest of corruption, presiding over a broken system.
Ninyi ndio mnapeana hiyo hongo. Kwa hivyo mkishika mjumbe, mshike na ule aliyempa. Nataka hizi vitambaa ununue ile inatoshana na 100,000 na kupea leo. 349 ulete kule bungeni. Ununue 10,000 upeleke pale State House.
From collapsing hospitals to ailing classrooms and the shadowy e-citizen scandal, the leaders painted a picture of a government adrift, insisting Kenyans have been betrayed.
Wakati ambapo shirika la SHA linatoa pesa kulipa hospitali gushi, hospitali hewa, halafu hospitali zetu zinaanguka, wanasema Sifuna anyamaze tu. Wakati ambapo e-citizen inapoteza bilioni zaidi ya 40, Apostle wanasema tunyamaze tu.
And it did not just end there. They demanded an immediate end to the wave of abductions in the country, warning the government that silencing voice of dissent was nothing short of shooting yourself in the foot.
Haujalishi unajenga soko ngapi. Kama unajengea hizo soko watu ambao umepiga risasi kwa mguu, wajivurute wakiingia kwa hiyo soko. Ama unatengeneza barabara ndio gari za maiti zipate na wakati rais kupeleka maiti kule nyumbani. Maiti ya watu ambao umeua. Kama unajenga barabara ndio Subaru ziingie kubeba vijana wetu kutoka kwa mtaa. Hizo barabara hatutaki, Apostle.
Nitauliza ni watoto wangapi waliopotea wakati wa maandamano.
And in a bold swipe at the legislature itself, Gathoni Wamushomba accused Speaker Moses Wetangula of weaponizing his office with unconstitutional rulings aimed at muzzling MPs.
Nimetafuta pahali nitastaki Wetangula, Speaker wangu, sababu alinifukuza. Haya, shika kitaba yako tuseme fire Wetangula.
We want to release the people of Kenya out of the hands of Pharaoh.
It is a church service here in Embakasi, here in Nairobi, where Senator of Nairobi, Edwin Sifuna, have asked the Kenya Kwanza government, led by President William Ruto, to solve issues that are affecting Kenyans and to do just like what he had told them to do during the 2022 elections. Now, this comes as the government goes through a number of issues, including abductions and even corruption conversation in this country. And they have asked the president, before asking for the member of parliaments to solve out corruption, he should be at the forefront to deal with the issues of corruption in this country. Haman Kamariki, KTN.
Thanks, Haman. Still in politics is national.
That's what's cooking in Parliament, whereby on Sunday at JTM fire judge, things turned around and they decided to bring things on the desk, whereby they decided to change the judge to be the political place where they wanted to pass the agenda. And they say that if they catching the mjumbe, they are supposed to catch the person who funds the mjumbe. Kamba wakishika mjumbe, washika pia naye anayempea hongo. Washike mjumbe na waache kumpea, wasishike mtu ambaye anampea hongo. At the same time as the MPs claims that the money that Ruto claims they have been given, the money comes also from Ruto. Ruto is the one gives them the money and is the one that who is the first person to be suspected with the corruption, and also those who are rotating him. So such a kind of conversation, you can't know that who's saying the truth, who's saying the lies, and the lies is there, or the truth is there. Everyone's side is there, because Ruto's side is there. Also the other MP sides, they have their own side. And for this, you can hear them speaking out, you can hear them sharing it out, and you can hear them conversing over it. So I don't know how do they balance it. I'd like to hear from you, from your comments too. Tell me, how do you feel? Who is right and who is wrong, and who is who in this case? Is Ruto right, or is the member of parliament right? And if one of them is right, how should they undertake it, and how should they do that? Because when you see from the perspective of Ruto saying that they are corrupted, they can't pass anything in the parliament or in the house before they have been given something. Okay, let me hear from you. Let us see this.
Yeah.
Thanks, Haman. Still in politics is National Assembly Speaker Moses Wetangula walking a tightrope in the corridors of power. Well, President William Ruto's pronouncement that Parliament is drenched in corruption and extortion has rattled the House, igniting a showdown between the executive and the legislature. As Jeff Kirui now reports, what looks like an outburst may well be a carefully scripted political chess game, with Wetangula in the crosshairs in an ongoing realignment ahead of the 2027 general election.
There is money being demanded from the executive, from governors, from ministers, from people in the executive, especially those who go for accountability before our houses of parliament.
In politics, they say nothing happens by chance, and if it does, it was probably planned that way. President William Ruto's stunning declaration that Parliament is corrupt has raised questions about the fate of the House leadership, with attention now fixed on National Assembly Speaker Moses Wetangula and his Senate counterpart Amason Kingi.
The wise say you give a dog a bad name and hang it.
For some leaders, Ruto's remarks carry more than meets the eye, as political whispers suggest the president's outburst may be a smokescreen, a subtle shot aimed directly at the National Assembly Speaker Moses Wetangula.
When the hyena wants to eat its children, it says they smell like goats. So we need to be alert.
The departure by His Excellency the President from being a consultative and a participatory leader into sustained attacks on Parliament is raising many questions.
This is not the first time Wetangula has been caught in the crossfire of political realignments. On March 9th, 2018, former President Uhuru Kenyatta and ODM leader Raila Odinga shook hands at the steps of Harambee House, birthing a truce that altered the country's political landscape. And within a week, Wetangula was ousted as Senate Minority Leader and replaced by Raila's ally James Orengo.
If anybody wants a divorce, it will be noisy, it will be messy, it will be unhelpful, and it will have casualties.
Wetangula became the first casualty of Uhuru-Raila handshake deal, and it was a bitter fall that drove Wetangula into the waiting arms of William Ruto, a partnership that carried him into the 2022 general elections.
Applause.
But history may be repeating itself. Raila Odinga's cooperation deal with President Ruto once again places Wetangula on shaky ground. Raila has long argued that Wetangula cannot serve as both Speaker of the National Assembly and party leader of Ford Kenya, which has members in the very house he presides over.
If you want to be a true Speaker, you must resign from being a leader of Ford Kenya. And then you can be a neutral Speaker. You can be able to preside over the deliberations of Parliament in a neutral way.
Analysts say the writing is on the wall. Wetangula could be staring at another political storm as the country drifts toward the 2027 general elections.
There was some times ago when it was being said that after Gachagua goes, the next one is what? Yes. Because somebody in ODM was supposed to become Speaker. And that somebody, I think, is qualified to be a Speaker because he's a lawyer and all those kind of things. But most important, he's Raila's man. So it was supposed to be part of the deal. And I think Wetangula fought back at the time. And he was spared.
Insiders say Wetangula has become a marked man within and outside his Kenya Kwanza coalition. Within Kenya Kwanza, his refusal to dissolve Ford Kenya and fold into Ruto's UDA has put him in the red book. From outside, the arithmetic of accommodating new political partners in government further complicates his survival.
There are these tensions in there, and the need to accommodate Raila's wishes become part of the dissolutioning activities. And that's why now the team that won 2022 looks confused and in disarray. And the president is trying to figure out how he can retain his job. What are they saying? Tutam.
Wetangula is now between a rock and a hard place because MPs are pressing him to invoke standing orders and summon the president to table evidence of corruption against the august house. Damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. If he does, he risks breaking ties with the presidency. If he does not, he risks a rebellion from MPs baying for his ouster.
Both speakers of the House must be put on notice that they are working on a very dangerous path. And members are thinking otherwise. That if this accountability is taken a notch higher, they might become the casualties of what is happening. And they will go before we go.
For Wetangula, the battle lines are drawn. Once again, he finds himself walking the fine line between loyalty and survival in the country's unforgiving political chessboard. Jeff Kirui, KTN.
Thanks, Kirui.
That's what's happening with Wetangula. Wetangula is now on the crossfire. He's on the pass. Do you think that first of all he was eliminated? He was removed from the Senate during the COVID, the handshake time. The same thing is coming also to repeated. But now today, to the conversation of today, you see that Wetangula is on the cross path, whereby he's supposed to ask the government, the president, to give out the receipt of the people who are said that they were paid to make sure they vote or they take any decision in the parliament. And also she's worried that if I do that, I'll lose my trust from Mr. President. So Wetangula is now on the thick path, on the thick way, even if we don't know how to help him. We don't know even how to assist him. Can you tell me what do you see also? As we check out this.
Staying with graft, MPs who have labelled themselves as Kenya Moja, led by the Nairobi Senator Edwin Sifuna and the Embakasi East legislator Babu Owino, are now accusing President William Ruto of being insincere in the fight against corruption. The Third Force MPs want the president to walk the talk and have all those mentioned in corruption scandals, including those in the executive, arrested and prosecuted. With that report is Stephen Leto.
While attending a Sunday church service in Embakasi East constituency, MPs who are now fashioning themselves as a third force movement took President William Ruto head-on, accusing the head of state of using parliament to shield the executive from corruption allegations.
Tunaona maovu. Leo hii Apostle tunanyoshewa kidole pale bunge. Na mimi nataka hawa waumini wajue. Hiyo kelele yote unasikia ni kutarget hawa bunge hapa.
Instead of seeing the broad-based government, you see the broad-based corruption, BBC. Ukiangalia nyuma yake, unaona pesa kwa e-citizen, 40 billion imekulwa. Kwa hivyo rais, ili umalize corruption, you must start with your house.
Huyo mtu ndio bado anatuimbia mambo ya corruption. Apostle, hii kitambo itusaidie. Na waomba, wewe utuletee hizi vitambaa. We want to unravel the issue of corruption once and for all.
The MPs claim the president's accusation on parliament must be followed with arrest and not threats directed at the legislature to shield the national government officials.
Hizo hela ambazo mnasema wabunge mnawapatia bribes, hongo. Nyinyi ndio mnapeana hiyo hongo. Kwa hivyo mkishika mjumbe, mshike na ule aliyempa.
Kama kuna mtu corrupt, tunataka ashikwe apelekwe kotini. Lakini si watu kusemekana ati wabunge ni corrupt. Wabunge ti corrupt, yule corrupt achukuliwe apelekwe kotini. Kama corruption iko State House, tunataka tuone watu wakiwekwa ndani.
Nairobi Senator Edwin Sifuna claimed that their third force is comprised of 70 members of parliament from across political divide who have come together to oppose President William Ruto's administration.
Hii kikosi ya Kenya Moja ama Kenya Mpya, sasa sisi ndio hawa jamaa Meshak, Shadrach na Abednego. Hatuko watatu, tuko zaidi ya hapo. Lakini ukituangalia, tumezingirwa kila mahali na maadui ambao wanataka kutumaliza. Herode anatokea huku. Saa kidogo Goliathi ametokea pande hii. Nebukadneza ako mbele yetu.
For 20 days sina mshahara. For 20 days siwezi ingia bunge. Siwezi ingia kwa ofisi yangu kwa sababu ya kuuliza maswali ya wanyonge wa mama hawana sauti.
Na sisi vile mnatuona hivi, timu yetu iko na wajumbe karibu 70. Wengine leo wametembea sehemu zingine. Sisi hatuna uoga. Sisi tumeamua tutembee pamoja, tukomboe nchi yetu. Mtatusaidia wananchi.
The MPs also vowed to oppose the privatization of the Kenya pipeline unless proper public participation is conducted. Stephen Leto.
So president should walk the talk and talk the walk. That's the things that are being brought up today, and that's what the things that has been raised, the issues that are raising up from the moment. And please, I want to hear from you. I want to listen from you to tell me, what do you speak or what do you speak about this? Do you feel like it's the right path that they should take, or do you feel that is the contradictory part that they are taking too? We have seen now the new launching up of Kenya Mpya. Kenya Kwanza, now we are having the new Kenya. Tell me, what do you feel about the Kenya Moja, the new Kenya now? That is the gem of the day. Mimi hata sijui niseme. There's now the Kenya Mpya. We had Kenya Kwanza, now we have Kenya Moja, which is now Kenya Mpya. And this Kenya Moja now is being picked off with Babu and other people, Sifuna too, and they're saying they want to also be getting their meetings as they are starting up. So what do you feel? Do you feel that Kenya Mpya, with the combination of Babu and Sifuna and the few members from UDA and ODM, will they bring a change and will be there? Will they have the strength to oppose Kenya Kwanza and the other government and the Kenya Kwanza and ODM? I want to listen from you, Blue, please, as we take the high chance to take the next level, whereby we're having the conversation with other people on board. We are joining Army in this 10 minutes to have the conversation over every matter on the Parliament street. This is what is happening.
Back and thanks for staying with us here on the Monday Report. In studio on my far right is Senator Moses Kajwang, representing Homa Bay County. Evening to you, Senator.
Good evening.
And thanks for making time. Sheila Masinde is the Executive Director, Transparency International Kenya. And thanks for making time, Sheila. Abdikadir Mohammed, Senior Counsel, is a constitutional lawyer, formerly advised President Uhuru Kenyatta on constitutional issues. And many thanks for making time as well, Senior Counsel.
Asante.
Senator, coming to you first. In light of the statements made by the President, you are quick to absolve the lawmakers of the bicameral parliament. Why?
Thank you. The President shouted at Parliament, and Parliament shouted back. And I think that we are in a state of lucidity right now, where we realize that we do not need to fight each other if you're going to be successful in the fight against corruption. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you that last week, at the rise of the House, the Speaker of the Senate made very clear communication on the proper manner in which unethical conduct on the part of Parliament should be processed. Now, we had pointed out that if the President had adverse information on unethical conduct on the part of members of Parliament, the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges has already provided procedures and steps for dealing with that. And at that point, we felt that that was important, and we still think that that is important. But what is more important is not to have a contest on who is right between the executive and the legislature. We must all accept that corruption is a serious disease in this country. It is in the legislature, it is in the executive, it is in the judiciary. At the end of the day, Parliament represents the people of Kenya. It is a very small sample of just about 300 ladies and gentlemen representing 55 million people. That 55 million people has got a lot of good people, but there are a few wash, there are a few conmen, there are a few corrupt people. And so you'd expect that if you've got a sample of 300, it would be representative of the population. So it would be foolhardy to deny that there could be wash characters and corrupt characters in Parliament. I mean, it's a representation of the country.
Okay.
But what we objected to was generalization and condemning an entire institution. Because in the 13 years I've been in Parliament, there's never been a motion that has been moved that we therefore move that this house be corrupt. It is not institutional, it is personal, and that's how it should be dealt with. But we are with the President on the same page, that this matter needs to be dealt with, but it needs to be dealt with in a systematic manner and in a manner that respects institutions. And in my view, when we go back to Parliament, we must make sure that the agencies that we have established, the laws that we have passed, just the other day we passed the conflict of interest bill, which has got very serious implications. Bodies like EACC, can we give them budget to make them effective in implementing the Conflict of Interest Act? Bodies like the OAG, bodies like the Control of Budget, let us give them the capacity so that this fight is institutional and it is devoid of political witch hunt and political machinations.
The President talked about some figure, and this is in relation to also what the Isiolo County Senator had decried at the floor of the Senate, and the tag names that were thrown around the chamber, and the money involved was 150 million Kenya shillings in the impeachment of Governor Abdi Guyo. To the best of your knowledge, did money exchange hands?
It did not. To my knowledge, it did not. And I think that is such a grave accusation that if the President has raw intelligence on it, really he should do what he promised he was going to do at the parliamentary group meeting. It is extremely gross because, look, just 2 weeks before then, we were processing the division of revenue, the county allocation of revenue, and we also processed a new formula for division of resources amongst county governments. Isiolo County, we were able to ring fence almost 400 million additional. There were some counties that were getting a very low allocation, Isiolo being one of them, Tharaka Nithi being another one, Lamu, Nyamira, Nyandarua, Kirinyaga, Taita Taveta. There were about 11 counties. It would be grossly out of order if the Senate or Parliament appropriates additional resources to go to Isiolo for purchase of drugs, for completion of the county headquarters, for completion of the county assembly headquarters, for that money to be siphoned and used for purposes that are outrightly criminal. That, if that can be established, then I would be happy if you can make an example out of it.
Sheila, you thereafter called for the naming of the MPs the president talked about. How far have you attained that in relation to the names that you wanted published?
What we asked is that, you know, what the president was doing was just shouting himself hoarse in public rallies, in public engagements. And as Senator has said, the president shouted, they shouted back. It doesn't help the situation. It won't help resolve the issue, because this is a very grave issue. We're talking about corruption. And as the Senator says, if you're, for instance, look at the case of Isiolo, it means that if people were bribed, for instance, in that to vote in a certain way in that impeachment motion, it means that funds, critical funds to health, to another critical county functions could then have been misappropriated. So these are grave allegations. But you see, this is not the first time that these allegations have been made. This is now the president making those allegations. There have been times when other members of parliament have made similar allegations, but not just touching on other people, but even executive itself has been accused of bribing members of parliament to pass legislation in the interest of the executive, in the interest of the president. You had some of the statements that were made on the floor of the House last week, where even there were some insinuations that blows like that touching on the social health insurance, the housing fund, the finance, that people were saying that they did their part of the obligation and did what the president wanted. So why are they now being accused of one thing or the other? Now, what we asked is these matters cannot be taken lightly. If the president has intelligence, if he has evidence, there are institutions which have been formed and are entrenched in the Constitution, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, responsible for investigation. Why can't that evidence be given to EACC to then investigate, probe these claims, so that if then someone is found culpable, not just the receiver, but also the giver of the bribe, let the law take its course. Because time without number, we've seen allegations on bribery, impropriety, gross misconduct, allegations of, touching on members of parliament. And this is a critical office. These are people that we elect to represent Kenyans, to be responsible for oversighting billions and billions of public resources, legislating. But now there are accusations that even those legislations that have been passed in Parliament or in Senate could have been influenced by bribes. So it is in the interest of everyone, and I think Kenyans have a right to get the truth to these issues. Because if we continue shouting about it, for me, it just looks like an attempt to play at the public gallery.
Senior Counsel, did Parliament set itself up for this?
There was a famous parliamentarian called Shikuku. One time he said KANU was the only party, it was a single party. And he said KANU was dead. And saying KANU was dead was completely acceptable during Kenyatta's time. And he was asked to substantiate. And he said, you don't need to substantiate the obvious. That corruption is rife in parliament is so obvious, nobody needs to substantiate. That corruption is so clear in the institution of parliament, as an institution, is absolutely, anybody who knows anything that goes on in parliament knows that so well. In the courts, when something is so notorious, you say you don't need to prove it. You take judicial notice of it. It's time we took judicial notice of corruption in parliament. The president was absolutely right, and he was talking to parliamentarians. He was not talking to the media. He was not talking to some forum. He was talking to members of parliament. Now, if you ask me, he shouldn't have done that. He should have done something about it. Talking about, I agree with the good lady. He should have done something about it. Number one. Number two, one of the biggest causes of corruption in parliament is the executive. Because the biggest threat to parliament's oversight role is the executive. So the president is the cause. Actually, he's a corrupter of parliament, the president. And parliament is dead. Parliament does zero oversight. And literally, a lot of corruption happens in parliament. Anybody who knows what goes on in parliament will tell you it goes on in committees, in functions. Any governor who has been impeached or has been brought for impeachment, corruption was there. Anytime a committee of parliament is doing budget stuff, there's a lot of malfeasance. So I think instead of debating where there is corruption in parliament or not, one of the few silver linings on this matter is that parliament and the president are on loggerheads. I hope they really go to war, because that is the best thing that can happen for the country. That those two institutions then will check each other, because our constitution is based on checks and balances. These institutions are supposed to check each other. They are not supposed to be in bed. It started during Uhuru Kenyatta's time, when the former Speaker of Parliament, Muturi, thought he was an officer of President Kibaki's State House. It has continued to this parliament. So there is corruption in parliament. The president was completely wrong. I don't think the president is that interested in fighting corruption in parliament. If he was, he needs to take the appropriate actions, not give a press conference, but actually do something about corruption in parliament. And it will help the country if those institutions go to war.
Yeah, good for democracy, you say. Senator Kajwang, then how do you somewhat remedy the elastic principles of Kenya's political elite, including members of the bicameral parliament, where you belong, in cultivating such a culture of causing up to the executive and whoever occupies the State House?
Well, I think, as I said, we must strengthen institutions. Parliament is an institution. Of course, if you are to look for the positives out of the conversation over the last 2 weeks, number one is that members of parliament, both Senate and National Assembly, have now realized that they're dispensable, that they are not that very special in the eyes of the executive. They can be used and dumped. You saw members of the National Assembly very strongly defending our finance bill. The then chair of the budget committee, Ndindi Nyoro, made very strong statements why it was necessary to tax Kenyans more. And several other leaders in the National Assembly and members of the National Assembly stood up for that finance bill. The president called them to State House and said he was not going to assent to it, and they clapped. At that point, it should have dawned on my colleagues in the National Assembly and even in the Senate that we can be thrown under the bus. Now, the events of the last 2 weeks should now embolden Parliament to ensure that we do the right thing, so that at the end of the day, the judge will be Kenyans rather than the executive.
Yeah.
The other thing that has made Parliament quite lazy is the availability of funds that members of Parliament, particularly the National Assembly, can use to substitute their core constitutional mandate. I know some members of National Assembly who are very good managers of CDF, very good. You walk around their constituencies, schools are done, they are tiled, they are roofed, toilets are built, painted properly. But when they come to Nairobi, you wouldn't know that this is a member of National Assembly or member of Parliament. And for a long time, over the 20 years of CDF, it has enabled a situation where sometimes the people vote for a member of Parliament because he's the one who knows how to gawer money properly, rather than he's the one who can oversight. So the conversations of the last week, the candid conversations around CDF, the candid conversations around corruption, must jolt us back to the realization that at the end of the day, the principle is the people. The principle is not the executive.
Yeah.
And I think it is good. It definitely, because for proper functioning of a democracy, it's not just about institutions fighting. There must be complementarity. There will still be areas where we'll still be able to sit on the table and agree. And particularly this matter, the fight against corruption, it is not a problem that can be solved by finger pointing. Because if, as Abdikari says, there's a problem in Parliament, and by the way, Parliament operates on traditions and precedents. Okay. He was in Parliament much earlier than I did.
Yeah.
So perhaps if that tradition is there, they're the ones who established it. So, but it is not useful to do the blame game. We must confront it.
Okay.
And you know, the Conflict of Interest Act, which was passed just recently, has got very detailed mechanisms on dealing with so many of these things that we are talking about. Does the president have the guts to ensure that budgets, to ensure that independence is afforded to the agencies that are supposed to implement it? That is what we are waiting for.
And Senator, then talking about the public apprehension, in finding the Damascus moment, Parliament was ought to have been prompted by the mood of the public. Is it the angst and the anguish, not the statements from the president? Ideally, even if we were to place the consequences, then the executive should be on the receiving end because they can impeach the sitting president. How have they eroded that capacity given to them to the extent that they have incapacitated themselves?
Look, the Gen Z revolt looked like an attack on parliament. It was an attack on government, being the legislature, judiciary, and the executive. It's just that they didn't make their way to the seat of the executive. But it was general anger against all the arms of government. At that point, I think the mistake we made was to then recoil as government, the various arms of government, and try to be defensive and try to cook up some instant solutions. But that did not get to the core of the problems that the young people were raising. And I think that the conversations, and I would like even civil society to continue raising the ante on these particular issues. If we don't deal with corruption, it is going to be a systemic, it is already is a systemic problem. It is already is a cancer. But we seem to be paying lip service because on one side of the mouth, we'll be condemning the vice. On the other side of the mouth, every Friday, we are taking 5 helicopters to go to Northeastern to provide cash handouts to people. From what proceeds? What business legitimate can you do that can fuel 5 helicopters to go for an empowerment drive where cash is being disbursed? This Damascus moment, if we didn't learn anything from the Gen Z revolt, and if we don't take advantage of this particular Damascus moment on the part of the president, I can tell you in the next 1 year, the young people are going to run us out of town.
Sheila, what's the perception index according to Transparency International Kenya of the Houses of Parliament?
Well, there has been no specific study on Parliament by us as TI, but generally, when you look at the general perception of corruption in the country, it is very low. In the last perception index globally, Kenya had a score of 32. But what that tells you is that when it comes to the institutions, the legislations, because we have a plethora of legislations and institutions that are supposed to be dealing with the problem of corruption, including Parliament. Because one thing that this constitution gave us is independent institutions, the doctrine on separation of power, and also checks and balances. For me, those are the 3 key elements of the Constitution, which we'll be celebrating in 2 days as we mark Katiba at 15, but which I think since 2013, we have totally torn up that Constitution and thrown it into the dustbin. When you look at how the executive, particularly the political class, has encroached on the mandates, for instance, and the functional autonomy of independent institutions that are supposed to check some of these things, including corruption. So that fuels that high perception of corruption in the country. And then there's also recently we did a Kenya Bribery Index, and we released the results just last month, where 72% of Kenyans said that corruption had increased in the last 1 year. And then when you ask them, how do you see the war against corruption proceeding in the next 1 year? And 80% are pessimistic. I saw the EACC report. I think the results are more or less similar in terms of the perceptions. And these perceptions are based actually on experiences. You experience a bribery demand, or you experience, witness corruption, and that tells you that every fabric of this country is affected by corruption. So maybe just to respond a bit to what Senator Kajwang says about the 3 institutions, the 3 arms of government rather, judiciary, executive, and parliament, I would actually hold parliament even to a higher standard, because it is parliamentarians that we elect. Yes, of course, for the executive, we elect the president and the deputy presidents, a joint ticket. But then it's the parliamentarians we elect to check and hold the president and the executive accountable.
Have they done so in the past 2.5 years?
Have they? Look at what we have even in terms of the outcomes of the Auditor General's reports. The recommendations, that the Auditor General's reports, we depend on Parliament to actually look at some of these, the reports. We see them summoning, and I'm happy Senator is here. I don't know that he still chairs the peak pack of
still chairs, yeah.
But I'll just use the example of the National Assembly. Yeah. You see them being summoned, you see people being summoned, but then where's the follow-up? We've seen commissions of inquiry by Parliament on some of these corruption cases, some going back even 5 years. Remember the time of the COVID-19 millionaires, KEMSA. Where is the follow-up? Parliament has let us down in terms of accountability. But as I said, we hold Parliament to a higher standard, because even when it comes to vetting and appointment and vetting processes, it is Parliament that we charge that responsibility to ensure that the right people are in office. Do they vet these people properly? People give declarations of wealth, and then we just nod on and note. But we don't even ask and ascertain some of those declarations that are given. Thank God now we have the conflict of interest law, and we hope some of these things will be taken a bit more seriously regarding the declaration of interest. But you see, Parliament, for me, holds a greater level of accountability. Yeah, when you look at the three arms of government, and it hasn't done that.
Senior Counsel, this crusade ought to have been driven by the ACC, the ODPP, is it? Why the President?
So can I first of all
yes, please,
visit the Parliament? In terms of quantum, the amount of monies that exchanges hands in Parliament is very little, because they're just few and the amounts are small. The biggest problem, the biggest disservice is the work Parliament would have done that goes undone. The most important institution of governance is Parliament. It's not the ODPP, it's not EACC, it's Parliament. Parliament is institution number one under the Constitution. So you lose out as a country on all the things Parliament will have done. One project done by the executive is billions of shillings, and it's stolen. And the people who are to have checked that is Parliament, and they're missing next one. So that's really where my beef with Parliament is, because I was a former parliamentarian and I know what Parliament can do. In terms of the ODPP and the ACC, quite a number of our institutions have been emasculated by the executive. Quite a number of our institutions don't operate as they ought to, because the premier institution of governance is missing in action. Most of these institutions get power or support or cover from Parliament. So in 10th Parliament, we had the precursor to the ESC, the Kenya Anti-Corruption Commission. The board report to us in committee to say, look, the presidency or the executive has reappointed a director general without our involvement. It's Parliament that came in to support them, to push the executive to make sure that that does not happen. So if Parliament is not doing what was expected, or not doing as well as was expected, these are the institutions that are far much weaker. Having said that, that does not absolve the ESC or the ODPP, because all these institutions are clothed with powers, they are clothed with cover to do their work, and they have obviously not done. My bigger problem is really the governance infrastructure that we have, the structure that we have really depends on Parliament doing its role and checking the executive. If Parliament is missing, or if the executive emasculates Parliament, the entire structure doesn't work.
Yeah, and whilst that is the reality, then can it then Parliament find a reawakening moments and stand up to the executive?
I am hoping that two critical things were pushed last week, which both are very dear to Parliament, and I hope that gives them a jolt. The first is that the President and to a lesser extent the former Prime Minister actually attacked parliamentarians and the institution of Parliament. And just like every other human being, Parliament doesn't like getting attacked. Certainly not by the people they thought they were supporting or doing their bidding. So I hope that jolts. The other is the fight over CDF. And can I just say, there is a misconception about CDF. If I was to bank the constitutional argument aside, the most useful shilling spent by the Kenya government is CDF. The most useful. shilling. If you are to audit the most useful, I know it's politically incorrect to say so, but believe you me, the amount that is spent on CDF is the most useful money spent by the Kenya government. It is not as much as people assume, because parliamentarians are not very popular. CDF is unpopular. The constitutionality is a completely different issue, and I can have that discussion. But knowing CDF, knowing what happens, that's a very useful. So because there has been attack on CDF and there has been an attack on their name, their good name, Parliament, I hope, fights back. I hope then this is the, as you said, the Damascus moment, where they wake up and finally hold their executive accountable.
Yeah. Senator Kajwang, how has Parliament and an architecture that is so different from our old constitutional dispensation so easily supplicated at the feet of the executive, eroding its immense institutional power?
I will take a less academic approach. The Constitution defines Kenya as a multi-party democracy, and the system of governance is a presidential system. In the US, partisanship is the order of the day, not by partisanship, partisanship. When the Republicans are running the country through their president, there is serious partisanship. People only come together when there's a gridlock that is shutting down the economy. In the UK, which Westminster style and parliamentary system, where we have moved away from, you remember the debate around Brexit. Yeah. It was a political party position. The people were hardened as a group, and you are either supporting Brexit or you are not supporting the party that you are subscribing to. So a multi-party democracy has got certain dynamics, which then would render academic some of the arguments that we're offering here. Because you've got formations in that parliament, some that belong to the party of the president. This thing was not, it was not invented in Kenya. The people we borrowed it from, the Americans, be it the Indians, be it the South Africans, be it the British, partisanship is the order of the day. Now, has Parliament been absolutely useless? Definitely not. One of the tools of oversight is impeachment and removal from office of public and state officers who are not doing things that are aligned to the Constitution.
Including?
The Deputy President, including governors. The Senate has exercised that power. And in the communication from the Speaker, I think since the Senate was established, we've had almost 18 impeachment motions. Half of them, the governors have been sent home. Half also, the charges have been found to be unsubstantiated. So it is not true that Parliament has been asleep. Parliament can send a member of the presidency home. It is also not true that when it comes to financial oversight and accountability, Parliament has been asleep. This financial year, and let me speak from my perspective as the chair of the Public Accounts Committee of the Senate. On the 27th of March, 2025, we called a special sitting of the Senate. I presented a report to the Senate on the reports of the Auditor General for the financial year 2023-2024, the most recent financial statements, for the very first time. I presented a 400-page fiduciary risks report. I presented a 2,000-page county-by-county analysis of issues raised by the Auditor General. Now, we made recommendations. There were recommendations for the EACC to investigate. There were recommendations on administrative action. Now, we can say Parliament has all the power, but my friend senior counsel knows that Parliament does not investigate. Parliament can do an inquiry, but it can only make recommendations to the investigative agencies to do further investigation. Parliament does not prosecute. That file has to be passed on to the ODPP. Okay. Parliament does not convict or acquit. That is the judiciary. Parliament does not correct. So it cannot then be blame isolation of Parliament without looking at the entire ecosystem. And that's why I said that when we sat back as members of the Senate, we said, no, let's not shout at each other, but let's find a systematic institutional approach to ensure that this conveyor is working. So like Sheila has asked, what has happened to the reports of the Auditor General?
Okay.
I can direct you to the website of the Senate. You'll find a 2,000-page county-by-county report, a 400-page fiduciary risk report, and there's clear action that has been indicated by Parliament on what should be done by institutions, and that has prompted us to invite the EACC before the Senate on the 10th of September to come and give us a county-by-county report on the action taken.
Okay.
And we also looked at the Act of the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions Act. Parliament has the power to request for a report from the ODPP on any matter. It is not directing, but it is asking for information. And we have said, where the EACC says that they've done their investigations and handed over the file to ODPP and the trail has gone quiet, we are also going to call them so that they can give the nation some account. So we probably have not done 90%, probably not even 70%, maybe not even 60%. But it would not be proper to say that Parliament has been completely at bed with the executive.
Yes, Sheila.
Well, it's good that they're waking up now from what Senator is saying. That is to happen on September 10th, because what we are speaking
ruled
on...
out the broad brush paving there.
No,
Because
the
we are
report came on 27th March.
Yeah, we're speaking from
March.
experience.
So it started earlier.
Yeah, because my own view was, yes, you can do the reports, but if the institutions are not going to take action, and they're not going to be, most importantly, held to account. So I'm happy that now they're going to call back someone EACC, someone ODPP, and find out, so we gave these recommendations in our follow-up reports based on what the Auditor General's findings and recommendations are. What have you done about this? I think that is very, very important, because that has been the missing part of the accountability chain when it comes to the issues around the public audit reports and the role of Parliament. So happy that's happening. We are going to watch closely to ensure that action is actually taken, because I think we have a problem in terms of action by some of these institutions. And I also want to just take the opportunity also to just maybe also respond to this issue around what are some of the things that Parliament has done. Yes, the impeachment motions, we've seen that. But of course, we also know that each impeachment motion has come with claims of bribery. They said that's what we started this discussion on. When we looked at the deputy president's impeachment, some of the governor's impeachment, there are always claims of corruption in that process. And the claims that if you're not politically aligned to the state house or the president, then Parliament is likely to vote regarding how the powers that be want you to vote. So I think there are still those claims, and I think that is why then Kenyans have very little trust in some of these processes. So these processes, even where they support that this person has been accused of corruption and should go home, but then there's always that doubt. But wait a minute, were these people actually compromised? Allow me to also feedback on what a senior counsel has said about the efficacy and the relevance of CDF. And I'm happy he has said he doesn't want to get into the constitutional debate, because he's a constitutional lawyer. So he knows once he gets into that debate, he himself will be the first one to say that CDF is unconstitutional, because the work of MPs is oversight, representation, and legislation. Nothing to do with implementation, because CDF is about then a project implementation, things that should be done then by the executive, whether the national level or the county level. So how are you going to be given oversight money, but you're the one who has implemented? Where is the accountability? What if you're accused of misappropriation? The same report on misappropriation of CDF is coming to you at the National Assembly. How fair are you going to be?
Okay.
And actually, even there have been a number of cases that have gone all the way to court on the misappropriation of CDF, a number of them. So that is why we have problems in regard to CDF accountability without even getting into that whole constitutional debate.
Thank you. So first of all, the constitutional issue, absolutely, I agree with you. The practical issue that I was looking at is there is very little accountability on any money Kenya government uses. So that's true for the entire budget. But in terms of how it is used, practically speaking, that is the most useful shilling that is spent. The constitutional issues, I absolutely agree. Now, in terms of, since we are focused on Parliament, Parliament is a very powerful institution. From the get-go, when the government comes in, the most senior officials, state officers, are sent to Parliament for vetting. In other words, Parliament can decide all those ministers the president has sent, all those PSS that were sent by the Public Service Commission and the president, we don't want them. They are not fit. So they have that power to decide. So they are the gatekeepers of who serves at the highest level. They have absconded. They have not sent anybody packing. When we all know there are very many people who are unfit to hold those senior posts. That is number one. The second thing is they have the power of the purse. Parliament does the budget, not the treasury, not the president. The people who decide how money will be spent in the country is Parliament. It is the most powerful tool you can use. Parliament can decide this institution will not get a shilling.
Okay.
Parliament has said so before. So Parliament can decide through that power what to support and what to stop. And if the ODPP or ECC is not doing their work, you can summon them. They have the power to summon anybody at any time and ask any question. So they have not utilized that.
Yeah, and that happened, is it, in practice? No reforms, no budget for President Moi.
There you go.
And how then did parliamentarians...
You ask a very important question, and Senator, the 10th Parliament, the 9th Parliament were operating under the old constitution, under essentially a dictatorship under old President Moi. And they were fighting so hard for space. You know, there was a time members of Parliament were paid at OP. Your salaries, you would go to Harambee House to get paid. That is how much Parliament was under the executive. Even your salaries was paid by OP. And those members of Parliament, Olo Aringo and the others, were fighting so hard to give Parliament independence. That's why they created the Parliamentary Service Commission, so that your salaries and your emoluments are not controlled by the executive. And then you have the constitution that then gives you so much support and power. And then you hand that over to the executive and say, we are waiting for you to, if you asked me, if the president today said Parliament should dissolve, you probably would get a majority of the members of Parliament voting for such a motion. If you ask me where the rain started beating us, the ICC probably would be the point. I'll say that is where we went crazy and we went wrong. The ICC was the death knell of Chapter 6. If you remember, we came in with, if you look at the history, this country has had certain moments when we could really break with the past. We were at independence, you could really go the right way. The next point, if you ask me, was 2003, when President Kibaki was elected with such a, and we could turn the right turn, but there was a problem with the MOU. The next was when the new constitution was promulgated. And for that one, what made us lose the train, in my opinion, was the ICC. That the ICC went ahead and indicted 6 people, and we elected 2 of them. And the fact that they were indictees and we elected them, and they were elected, then took away the power of you could not come around and say the next politician has to be held to account. I mean, you have elected somebody who is indicted at the ICC. So that's where we went wrong, and we have gone wrong since. Parliament's capture didn't start under the current administration. It started in the Uhuru Kenyatta administration. The first administration first, and was cemented in the second administration, and it has been downhill since. If we get Parliament to turn around, then the Constitution and its implementation and our governance can only be better. If Parliament stays the way it is or goes worse, then I think everything else is up for grabs, so to speak.
Yes, Senator.
Yeah, I mean, nostalgia can be a powerful intoxicant because my friend remembers the good old days of Parliament. With the new constitution, we have very clear procedures, even for budgeting and financial management, under the PFM Act, under regulations, and budgeting starts with a budget policy statement, which comes to Parliament. And I will repeat this. The budget policy statement is an intent of the executive in place, an executive that was elected through a political party that has got members in that Parliament. And it comes from their manifesto. So you cannot dissociate that joint at the hip between the executive and members of parliament or members of National Assembly, because they belong to parties, and Kenya is a multi-party democracy.
So, Senator, at what point then, and why do you think members of parliament overlook the national public priority at the expense of political party belonging?
Absolutely. Because who do you elect to parliament? Is it a pastor or a politician? It is a politician. So it is a political process.
So politicians do what they deem fit, not what the public deems fit.
And the politician belongs to a political party.
Yeah.
And that political party could be the party that the president belongs to. And there's absolutely nothing wrong to have a party position, because as I've demonstrated in the US, they take party positions in the most annoying manner.
Yeah.
Even in the UK, they take party positions.
But Senator, two quick examples, and most Democrats were against the Build Back Better initiative by President Biden, and also Tory members of the Conservative Party were against Prime Minister Boris Johnson's Brexit plans in removing the United Kingdom from the European Union. However, the political party belonging we talked about, at what point then does the political party position not outweigh the public position here? In this case, the collective argument that, for instance, in 2024, members of parliament clapped when the president said he's not going to sign the finance bill. A day before that, they knew the public mood was against the punitive tax proposals, yet they ended up passing it. So did they look at the president and the political party they belonged to at the expense of the public mood, which was, do not overtax us. Look, the economy is bad, that we are stretching, the household budgets are under squeeze. So where's the balance between the public interest and political party?
I agree with you, Ayub. But then let's pose the question, even if you took a Socratic approach. Who do you elect? How do you decide who becomes your MP? There are some parts of this country where people campaign to be members of National Assembly or Senate, saying that they're going to assist the party leader in the fight in Nairobi. There are some parts of the country where people elect a member of National Assembly on the basis of how they're going to utilize the CDF. Until we reconfigure our selection criteria, because our election is not an integrity test and it is not a merit test. It is a popularity political test. We are in parliament, there are 300 of us. There are people who have never spoken on the floor of the House. And yet when you go to their constituencies, they're extremely popular in funerals. They're extremely popular in sport activities. We must reconfigure our selection criteria, because you will come here and say the ideal, the Platonic approach. But at the end of the day, parliament is composed of men and women who have gone through that process. Now, let me weigh in on this issue of CDF, because I think by far, many members of National Assembly pitch their campaigns on proper utilization of the CDF. And I say so because I've got 8 constituencies that form my voting block. And I know the conversations. And I agree with senior counsel here that the issue of CDF is quite emotional. And it is not something that we can deal with from the Nairobi perspective. In fact, this bill is before the Senate. And when it comes for a first reading, and when we go into public participation, and when we go into our legislative work, I can tell you, we, as members of the Senate, we have said, we are not necessarily going to kill the baby. But we believe that we must restructure, we must rewrite the rules around CDF. And 2 things must happen. We must get politicians out of CDF. The second thing is that we must bring back equity rather than equality. I was in Dhiwa constituency just the other day. 300,000 residents. Lamu East, 25,000 residents. They get almost the same allocation on CDF. That equality cannot work. We believe that even with new structures of governance, including county governments, this money, this fund that has already been established, can still be implemented through conditional grants, or we can look at other structures, like the Equalization Fund is being administered up to village, up to location level, without going through the constituencies and without going through the county government. There are various approaches that we can use, but the public is a bit apprehensive. For example, schools are reopening, and I saw your news item. Schools, books have not been supplied in a number of schools. I was with the heads of headmasters in my county. They're telling me that in some cases, a school can be supplied with 3 or 4 textbooks for a huge population. Why? Because when Matiang'i was CS, he reorganized that system so that supplies could be coming from Nairobi. That has failed. There's something else they use for extracurricular activity, where initially it used to be collected at the local level, then it was sent back to the national. Nothing is coming back down. Okay. So the apprehension is, even if you say that take the money back to the Ministry for Infrastructure, there are certain parts of this country that won't work. So on CDF, I think we will perhaps agree to disagree with some of our political leaders, but we must restructure it to remove politicians so that politicians can come back to the higher calling that senior counsel is talking about.
You had a point?
Yeah, I was just going to, sorry. Look, there's a point I agree with Senator that members of parliament are politicians and our political structure is a problem. That being said, there's no political party that has corrupt practices on its manifesto. What we're asking Parliament to do is its mandate under the Constitution. And there's no political party that says, you as my member of Parliament, I'm going to send you a very unqualified person. You have to accept. Under what mindset? You're not looking out for the national interest. You're not doing your constitutional mandate. What we're asking Parliament to do is not to jump out of their political party. They belong to a political party, but it is incumbent upon you to make sure that your political party does the right things, to look out for the national interest, to do your duty as a member of Parliament. Because when you are a member of Parliament, you are in the most important decision-making body of the country. You can't say because of a political party, I am going to be blind, I'm going to close my eyes when somebody completely unqualified is sent as a minister because of political party loyalty. Or if half the budget is being stolen, I'm going to keep quiet because my political party is in the presidency. Because it's possible for Parliament to be one party or one house of Parliament to be in one party and the presidency to be in another party. So government is not the executive. And that's why I say the rain started beating us when Muturi was the first speaker, when they assumed they were government and the government bills. In fact, the same fallacy that budget is from the executive. Budget is not from the executive. Budget is a parliamentary function. In the US, they say the president's proposals are dead on arrival. They are thrown into the dustbin. You negotiate with Parliament for the budget. Yeah. So I think it's important for Parliament to take its role. The fact that they are in the same party with the president or with the executive does not absolve them from taking their responsibility.
Yeah. Yes, Sheila.
Yeah, just a point on the CDF and the role of Parliament. I think if CDF then was, as Senator says, I understand it from his explanation, is to deal with the inequitable allocation of resources in the country, then we must deal with the elephant in the room. Why are we still in this day and age talking about inequitable resource allocation of resources? You know, what constitutional structures we have already constitutional structures when you talk about the county governments, the devolved system of governance, and the funds, the many funds that exist that are supposed to ensure that, you know, every Kenyan is reached by by that shilling or cent, you know, from what we taxpayers pay to the government every month. Then how do we ensure that then there's equitable allocation such that then we don't use unconstitutional means like CDF to perpetuate a problem? Because as I said, there's still a very big problem in terms of accountability. And just look even at the story you had on education. Yeah. You know, the level of need, poverty and hunger in this country, I don't think it's going to be dealt with by ensuring that you strengthen CDF, you constitutionalize it, you legitimize it. You may try whatever you want. I don't think it's going to work in under this current constitutional framework. So we must deal with the elephant in the room. But also the level of hunger, need, and desperation is so much across the country. I don't think Kenyans are looking at that CDF and saying this is the answer to all our problems. I mean, just look at even how they're reacting to the empowerment, this whole empowerment rallies. You can see they're just looking for money from anywhere. So it's not just CDF. So we just need to ensure that we use the means that we have created, you know, under this constitution, that we took so much time to develop, that we fought so much through our tears, sweat, and blood, and let MPs do the work they're supposed to do. Because as it is now, this obsession with CDF is compromising the oversight role. MPs are not oversighting. Money is being stolen left, right, center. This country is up for grabs. MPs are doing very little about it. When it comes to representation, they are not representing the public interest. The public says they want this, they don't want the finance bill, they don't want the housing levy, they don't want the social health insurance fund. MPs go and vote in a different way. So they're not representing Kenyans. When it comes to legislation, look at the quality of legislation, So MPs are not doing the work that they're supposed to do because they are obsessed with CDF. So we must get it out of the way so that MPs can do the work that we have put them in office to do.
Yeah, and Senator, before the vote on the Finance Bill 2023, now an Act of Parliament, the president in Narok County, finger-pointed MP, said, I want to see who is the lawmaker who will vote against this. It seems this is not a shadowy conspiracy, is it? It's openly planned in public. Yet you have MPs who will go to Parliament and be presidential cheerleaders and representatives of the public. Can that understanding be revived now?
The beauty of our constitutional order is that we have elections every 5 years. And the trend has been that at every election, 60% of members of parliament go home. And so we've got renewal, we've got a way of refreshing. And so it is not just a matter of saying MPs are not doing their work. We must also make sure that we do our civic duty as citizens to ensure that we put the right people in office. Absolutely. You see, it is contradictory to be encouraged that we have a lot of power, but then when we propose that, fine, even this CDF, we can restructure it, then I'm being told that, no, you cannot do it. Look, Ayub, the thinking of the person on the ground, leave alone as in high streets in Nairobi. If you can ring fence 15% for devolution, ring fence another 2.5%, again, it's devolved. Actually, it's devolved. That was the argument of the courts, that money should go through devolved structures. So if we can ring fence 15%, ring fence another 2.5%, ring fence another 0.5% as equalization fund, you have a total of 18% that can go direct to the grassroots without being pilfered in Nairobi. What would be wrong with that? We have so many funds that have been established. Road Maintenance Levy Fund, Housing Fund. You can have CDF renamed Sub-County Development Fund, or it can be named Equitable Development Fund, whatever it is. It is just about ensuring that people can be assured that they will continue to get resources irrespective of the political choices they've made. In the past, and that past that we are glorifying, there are certain parts of this country that could not get even doctors posted to those areas. And whenever I talk to governors from northern Kenya around this issue of medical personnel, for example, saying that we centralize it so that it operates like TSC, I have been told by governors and people who are boots on the ground that if you take this thing back to Nairobi, then people will be posted from Nairobi, they will never report. You have seen teachers are not reporting to northern Kenya. They are claiming it is insecure and all that. And the governor told me, Senator, you must allow us to come up with proper incentives and proper packages that can ensure that people can come and work in Mandera, can work in Garissa, can work in Wajir, and can work in Turkana. So Kenyans want to be assured of support. They want to be assured of development irrespective of their political choices. In fact, that was a conversation we are having this week. One of my colleagues said that places like Homa Bay didn't vote for the president and so they shouldn't get development. But that is a wrong perception. That is a wrong concept. Voting and contribution to the economy are two completely different things. You can contribute to the economy without supporting the president in office. Should you be denied development? And so that was the initial thinking around CDF, and of course, it must be aligned to the constitution. And you remember the other objection that the courts raised, that the matter did not go through the Senate. That was a very, very significant objection because it is a matter affecting counties. Now it is with the Senate. I want to guarantee and assure the nation that we are going to make the right decision, the decision that accords with the needs of the people and a decision that aligns with the constitution.
Okay. Yes, let's sample the feedback, ladies and gentlemen. It's been an hour now talking about this very subject matter. Sir Nixon Ndugura says fighting corrupt in Kenya, or corruption, is a real tall order, very difficult because the corrupt gurus are faceless. The briber and the bribee are just but very tormenting ghosts who are not scared by the many threats hurled at them. Engineer Lazaro says why corruption allegations rattle parliamentarians, and a good number of them fights various graft cases in courts. There is misconception somewhere. Parliaments fighting back instead of redeeming themselves. Orut Wasam says it's at times hard to give corruption the fight it needs in our country, where every leader has no clear name from corruption, where citizens accept corruption as normal. Then in every aspect we are lying to ourselves as a country to end it. Mark_Makuda says Parliament has been a rubber stamp of the executive, the same executive that's complaining goes to bed with the National Assembly and thinks its infidelity will go unnoticed. It's time to style up. John Musunga says when the president said he wants to fight corruption, he should mean it by naming those MPs and senators who are corrupt. He should not spare them at all. We want them arrested. The final comments is in the council, briefly.
Thank you very much. I think we started with the Katiba. The infrastructure is there, the institutions are there. If you ask me, the main issue Kenyans can undertake that has to do with our political culture. One of the things Senator said was, who do you elect? It's a good question. If you elect X because X comes from your ethnic community, or because the political party leader has said you should elect X, you should not expect X to do governance issues, to do all the great things, so long as the person is from your ethnic community or he or she has been elected on the instructions of a political party leader. So I think the most important thing as we head towards 2027 is, who do we give these very powerful offices? I think we as a nation owe it to ourselves to elect people based on the right things, not on the wrong things. And then choices have consequences. If you elect people on the wrong premises, well, it comes with the territory.
Thank you. I think as
watu wa Mungu, Bwana Yesu asifiwe. Kipindi cha mahubiri kimerudi tena kwa kishindo kwenye Sound Candy Talk. Tunakufundisha, kukuelimisha na kukutia moyo kwenye Daily Bite. Mafundisho kamili ya Biblia kila siku kwenye runinga uipendayo ya Sound Candy Talk. Hallelujah.